All right, grade 12s, let's get right into it. Welcome to this masterclass explainer. Today, we are bringing some serious energy to one of the absolutely most vital chapters in your entire economics syllabus, the dynamics of imperfect markets. If you've ever wondered how real-world, massive businesses actually set their prices, how they maximize their profits, and how they manage to block out competitors, well, you are in exactly the right place. So get your notebooks ready, because we're going to break down these pretty complex theories into totally clear, unforgettable frameworks.
So here's our game plan for today. We'll start by locking down some key vocabulary, then take a massive deep dive into monopolies, shift gears to oligopolies, and then unpack monopolistic competition. After that, we'll pull it all together into a summary comparison, and of course, talk exam techniques so you can absolutely crush Section C.
Okay, first things first, the core vocabulary. Before we start shifting curves around, we need to make sure we're speaking the exact same language as the exam markers.
Let's start with the big one, the imperfect market. Up until now, you've probably spent a lot of time studying perfect competition, right? That magical, theoretical, textbook world where everybody is just a price taker. But in the real world, things are a lot messier. In an imperfect market happens when the price isn't just a pure reflection of supply and demand or scarcity. In these markets, the sellers actually have power. They can influence the price.
And sitting at the absolute extreme end of that power scale is the monopoly. This is a market structure where there is literally only one single seller. They aren't just competing in the industry, they are the entire industry. And because there are zero close substitutes for whatever they're selling, consumers really only have two choices: pay the asking price or go without.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth does a monopoly stay a monopoly? Why doesn't anyone else just start selling the same thing? Well, it's all about barriers to entry. Think of these as massive, invisible walls protecting our single seller from hungry competitors. It could be a legal wall, like a government patent on a life-saving drug. It might be exclusive control over a vital natural resource, like a diamond mine. Or, honestly, it could just be the totally astronomical capital costs you'd need to even try competing.
Which perfectly sets the stage for our second section. This is arguably your most heavily tested topic in the exams, so really lock in here. We are going deep into the power of one.
Because a monopoly has zero rivals, they completely run the show. They are the ultimate price maker. They sell a totally unique product, and as we just said, entry is totally blocked. Now, crucially, and this is a big difference from perfect competition, a monopoly faces a normal, downward-sloping market demand curve where demand equals average revenue. And because they're the only player in town, they can sustain massive economic profits for a very long time. Plus, they can even pull off price discrimination. You know, charging different people completely different prices for the exact same thing, whether we're talking first, second, or third degree. It just maximizes their gains even more.
Now, examiners love to test if you know the difference between the two types of monopolies. On one side, you have the natural monopoly. Think of South Africa's Eskom. The sheer amount of starting capital required to build massive power stations and string up national grid lines is so unbelievably high that it really only makes economic sense for one giant entity to do it. But on the other side, we have artificial monopolies. These don't happen naturally, they're created by laws. Think of a pharmaceutical company that invents a new medicine and gets an exclusive legal patent to be the only seller for 20 years.
Okay, if you remember only one thing from today, make it this: the golden rule of profit maximization. MC equals MR. Marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Listen, whether you are a massive monopoly, an oligopoly, or just a tiny little coffee shop, if you want to maximize your profit, you have to produce exactly at the quantity where the cost of making one more unit perfectly equals the revenue you get from selling it. Just think about the logic. If bringing in one more unit makes you more money than it costs to produce, you keep going. The absolute moment those balance out, your profit has peaked. Burn this formula into your brain. So once you found that sweet spot, that MC equals MR quantity, how do you actually know if the business is turning a profit? You just compare average revenue to average cost. It's conceptually super simple. If your average revenue, which is just the price you're charging, is higher than your average cost at that specific quantity, boom, you are making a supernormal or economic profit. But, and it's a big but, even a monopoly can suffer an economic loss in the short run if demand suddenly drops and their average revenue falls below their average cost.
Generally, though, if a monopoly is making those supernormal profits, they hold a massive advantage. Because of those blocked barriers to entry we talked about, no new competitors can jump in and steal their market share. So unlike other markets, a monopoly can comfortably just keep sustaining its supernormal profits right into the long run. The party doesn't stop.
But let's shift gears for a second. What actually happens to a market when those barriers to entry aren't completely blocked?
What happens when a giant monopoly suddenly has to share the stage with a handful of huge rivals?
Welcome to the oligopoly. This is a market structure defined by intense tension, bitter rivalry, and a fascinating concept economists call mutual interdependence. It's the battle of the few. This perfectly illustrates how things change when just a few massive players dominate. Think of our major banks, cell phone networks, or car manufacturers. Entry here is super difficult, but not impossible. The absolute defining feature is that mutual interdependence. A business in this market literally cannot make a move without agonizing over how its rivals will react. It's basically game theory in action, exactly like the prisoner's dilemma. Because of the strategic chess game, they face a very weird, kinked demand curve. If they raise prices, customers just flee to the rivals. If they drop prices, the rivals instantly copy them, and everyone just loses money. So to avoid those destructive price wars, oligopolies rely heavily on non-price competition. We're talking massive advertising budgets, heavy branding, and loyalty programs.
But sometimes the stress of constantly competing is just too much. So instead of fighting it out, oligopolies occasionally decide to secretly team up. This is called collusion. They might form a cartel, the classic example being OPEC with global oil, and they start acting as if they were one giant collective monopoly. By fixing prices and artificially limiting the supply, they basically guarantee themselves massive profits. Now, to be clear, this is highly illegal in South Africa and most of the world, but it definitely still happens.
All right, let's change the rules again. Let's pull those barriers to entry all the way down. What happens when it's incredibly easy to start a business and hundreds of sellers rush in? We get monopolistic competition.
This is a really fascinating hybrid market. In fact, it's the market you probably interact with the most every single day. Think fast food joints, local hairdressers, or clothing brands. There are many buyers, many sellers, and entry is totally free. But unlike perfect competition, where every single product is perfectly identical, here products are differentiated. Through fancy packaging, slight tweaks in quality, and clever branding, a burger joint tries to make you believe their burger is one of a kind. And that tiny bit of uniqueness gives them just a little bit of monopoly-like control over their price.
But listen up, because here is the ultimate exam trap. In the short run, a hot new monopolistic competitor can absolutely make an economic profit. But remember, entry is entirely free here. So those profits act like a giant magnet. New competitors see the money, flood into the market, and offer basically the same services. That sudden surge in supply pushes prices down and chips away at everyone's market share until, in the long run, businesses in this market are squeezed down to only making a normal profit.
Wow, okay. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground. Let's take a breath and synthesize all these moving parts into one clean, unified framework. This right here is basically your ultimate cheat sheet.
It is absolutely fascinating to mentally trace the spectrum here. Just think about moving from left to right, from a very large number of firms in perfect competition, all the way down to just one single firm in a monopoly. Notice how the barriers to entry slowly shift from being completely free to entirely blocked off. And the biggest takeaway? Only oligopolies and monopolies, the markets protected by those difficult or blocked walls, are capable of securing long-term economic or positive profits. Seriously, take a mental snapshot of this matrix. If you truly understand how these variables shift, you can confidently answer almost any multiple choice or short answer question the examiners throw at you.
But of course, understanding the theory is only half the battle, right? The other half is translating all this amazing knowledge into maximum marks on your final NSC exam. Let's talk strategy.
When you sit down in that exam hall, strategy is everything, whether it's banging out definitions in Section A or interpreting those tricky monopoly and oligopoly graphs in Section B. But let's look at your massive Section C essay. Step 1. Your introduction has to explicitly define the exact imperfect market you're discussing. Step 2. The body. This is where you list out the characteristics, explicitly state that MC equals MR, profit maximization rule, and critically, you've got to nail those graphs, get the curves right, and definitely don't forget to clearly shade in the profit or loss areas. Step 3 is the additional part. Usually they'll ask you to evaluate how a monopoly impacts everyday consumers or how well competition policies actually stop collusion. And finally, step 4, wrap it all up with a really strong, definitive conclusion about the market's overall efficiency.
Before you even think about walking into that exam room, I want you to run yourself through this final rapid-fire checklist. Be honest with yourself. Can you effortlessly define every key concept we covered? Can you explain exactly why MC equals MR is the magic profit formula? Can you just glance at a graph and instantly spot whether it's a profit or loss by comparing the AR and AC curves? Can you confidently compare the 4 different market structures? If you can easily tick off every single box here, you are totally ready.
I want to wrap up today by leaving you with a final, pretty provocative thought. We've seen that as soon as we step away from perfect competition and move into these imperfect markets, businesses instantly gain the power to restrict output and artificially push up prices. That creates real inefficiencies and a massive deadweight loss for society. So if this is just the natural, inevitable dynamic of the business world, how much intervention does a government really need to protect us, the everyday consumers? It's a hugely important question, and it's exactly why truly understanding economics is so crucial for navigating the real world. Keep studying hard, stay focused, and I know you are going to absolutely crush your exams.